Hello, everyone. This is Kerwin here, and welcome to the very first episode of our aviation show. The show, I think, is tentatively called Travel This Week with Cushrow and Kerwin. My name is Kerwin, and I'm going to let my friend Cushrow, who I've known for eons, introduce himself, and then I'll tell you a little bit about me. So go ahead, Cushrow.
Hello, my name is Cushrow. I've always been an aviation, geek since as far back as I can remember. And it took me a while work at an airline, but I finally started in 1999 at Continental in Houston. And I retired in 2012 as part of the merger with United Airlines. But I still keep up with aviation on a very regular basis. So it'll be interesting to see how this turns out.
All right, cool. Now Kushra doesn't give himself much justice. Kushra is a genius. He knows a lot about the aviation industry. His background is finance, so he did revenue management, and I did revenue management back in the day. But Kushra has a wealth of knowledge. So my name is Kerwin. I started in aviation industry in 1994 when I started working for Delta in Washington D.C. at DCA. Then I went to ATA, and then I went to Continental, which is where I met Cushrow. And we fly quite a bit, and we go almost everywhere. It's great when you have an airline person who loves the stuff that you do in an airline industry, because we get paid crap. The flight benefits are the best part of it. So we tend to go a lot of places and share a lot of that. So our goal of this show is there's a lot of stuff in the headlines, a lot of stuff. And we've been trying to get the show up for a little while. And finally I got Kushrow to sit down and talk about it. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at stuff that's in the headline each week, or probably every other day, depending. I don't know what the frequency is going to be, but we will at least have one show for you every week. And we're going to look at the headlines, and we're going to give you what we think the stories are. Because sometimes you see the stuff in the headlines, and you don't even understand what the heck they're talking about. And a lot of people don't even know what they're talking about. But we are travel experts, and we know the industry, and we're going to try to put everything straight. So it's crazy times right now. As everyone knows, the coronavirus has basically decimated the airline industry. A lot of people just aren't traveling anywhere because of the coronavirus, and we haven't figured out how to counteract it yet. So I asked Cushrow to come up with some headlines, and I'm looking through here. And what we're going to talk about first is a few airlines are on the verge of collapse. And Cushrow, why don't you go ahead and talk about that for a little bit?
So we've been hearing about all these headlines about how the coronavirus pandemic is affecting airline traffic, which should be no surprise. But there are a whole range of airlines, smaller airlines mostly, that don't have the liquidity or the government resources to pull through. And I was surprised to hear that Virgin Atlantic and now Virgin Australia as well.
Yeah.
In addition to South African, which is not a great surprise. And today I heard about Mauritius and even Cabo Verde. I think that's the way you pronounce it.
Yeah.
Again, very niche carriers, but still, they serve a unique function, and it's all a case of traffic patterns dying and being reliant on a single source of traffic. For instance, for Mauritius and Cabo Verde, travel, leisure travel, more specifically.
Yeah.
South Africa, I think, has to do with government mismanagement, much like Air India. But Air India is not in the same predicament. And Virgin is, I guess, being a little too small to have the resources to get government backing.
So the thing with Virgin, I think I saw something that said Sir Richard Branson wants to mortgage his island to pay for the airline. Like, how much is
Yeah.
this island worth?
And what would they do with it once they got there, the
I,
investors?
yeah, but I've always wanted to go to Necker Island, so I could probably understand that.
I doubt they would let the two airlines collapse because they provide much needed competition to BA and Qantas.
Yeah,
But who knows, really? Because Virgin Australia, at least, has always had problems reaching profitability on an annual basis, at least.
right. Now, I did see
But
something when there was, I'm sorry, when they were talking about Virgin Australia, that they were probably going to come back, but as a smaller airline. And
yeah, that's what everyone says.
yeah, well, one thing I've always thought about the airline industry is um, the CEOs are very egotistic. And it's always like, I am the number one airline in this. I'm the biggest airline in this. And sometimes when they do routes, I'm like, why do you need to go to another place? I know they do numbers and things like that, but sometimes it just seems that they've stretched themselves too thin, and that's pretty obvious now. That's why a few of them are shuttering their doors. What do you think about that?
I don't have access to profitability by geography for Virgin Australia, at least.
Yeah,
But I would say their overseas portfolio is not that large. They have
yeah.
Los Angeles in the US, and of course, all of Southeast Asia and North Asia.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I'm really not sure what the deal is with VX, as it's referred to. But
Yeah.
and one of the reasons, I think one of the big problems they have is that they're not Australian owned. So
Uh,
the government of Australia has refused to give them any sort of loan guarantee or anything like that. So I think that's a major portion. And I think Branson in Britain has his hands full with his own Virgin Atlantic.
yeah. So,
So I'm sure the two will come back somehow. And I'm actually surprised that Delta has not stepped in to help out Virgin Atlantic. But I think they've got their own issues as well. And as
yeah.
part of the CARES Act, I don't know if the government will look too favorably on Virgin spending the money to resurrect on Delta, sorry,
That's it.
spending
Yeah.
cash to resurrect Virgin Atlantic, a foreign carrier.
Yeah, which makes sense because Delta and Virgin and KLM and Air France, they have this transatlantic partnership.
But each of them is in a worse situation than the other.
Yeah,
Um, but I would be very, very surprised if Virgin Atlantic disappeared. But
I
we
would be.
never ever thought we'd be in this situation.
I know that's very true. All right, so clearly this is going to continue, and hopefully by the next few shows, we will definitely be able to get some clarity on what's going to happen with these airlines. So the next thing we're going to talk about is 737 cancellations. What have you seen in those?
Actually, recently I've seen a lot, and this is proving to be an ideal case of airlines that don't need it canceling their orders. Though I don't know how much of their deposits they're going to lose. But I guess in the grand scheme of things, um, it would be cheaper for them to cancel at this stage and lose the deposit if
Yeah,
they have put one in anyway.
exactly.
But yeah, I think the Chinese carriers or Chinese lessors, and I believe an Irish one
Yeah,
as well, have cancelled like maybe a total of maybe less than 100 737 Maxes. Um, Again, I don't know where this is going or if this is just a means to extract more discounts from Boeing, which is
yeah,
always a possibility because Boeing is floundering right now.
yeah,
Um, but and the price of oil is also undercutting the need for a 737 Max, which is more efficient, fuel efficient.
exactly.
But things can change on a dime, as they say.
That's true. And also, there's a lot of planes that are parked, right? There's a lot of 737s that are parked.
That's right. Yeah.
Um,
So it's going to be a huge logistical nightmare to get those aircraft out of their uh, parking locations and bring them back to Boeing for updating or whatever, and then deliver them in
Yeah.
a sequence, in a particular sequence to all the individual airlines.
Well, it's crazy. And as we talked about parked airplanes, I read an article, it might have been on Bloomberg, about all the things that they have to do to the planes while they're
Yes,
parked.
yes, that was a very interesting article.
I know, right? And it gave you a really good insight into what's going on, because I think the general public doesn't really understand that. They just get on the plane and get going, and they're mad whenever something is broken. But I think one of the engine checks that they have to do, they have to start the engines a few days.
Every few days, yeah.
That's
But
crazy.
they have to cover up everything to prevent birds from nesting, which I thought was interesting.
Uh-huh.
And then also, I don't know how they do this, is they have to rotate the tires every few days, or I think it was days for the heavier, the 380s,
Yeah.
the 747s, the 777s, which I thought was interesting.
I know. I didn't understand that they had to do that either. So that was actually quite good. And now I guess that's good, right? Because it means that it keeps the mechanics working. But then if they're storing the planes in, say, Victorville, does this mean all the mechanics have to go hang out in Victorville, or do they fly there every other day or something?
I don't think they can move a lot of those planes because they're all behind a whole series of other jets.
Yeah. Yeah. No. I mean, like So I mean, where are the workers staying? Just the logistics behind.
And
Right.
or if Victorville or Mojave
Yeah.
or any other storage location, if they have their own staff who will cater to the airlines.
Yeah. See,
Because
I'm
I
not,
believe they have to be fully fueled as well.
which is crazy,
So
isn't it?
yeah,
Well, but how long can the fuel stay in the tanks without being used, right? Isn't there a thing on that?
but they have to restart the engines every so often.
Yes, I guess
So
that'll use some time.
yeah,
Oh my God.
and what else? And I think they have to run um, the in all the systems of the aircraft every so often as well.
Yeah.
Keep things running and all that. So it's not just a simple thing of just closing up the engines and other orifices on the aircraft and just forgetting about them. I didn't realize there was so much work involved to keep those aircraft in flying condition.
And of course
So
that's going to cost the airlines money as well, right?
yes.
Well,
So
so as we talk about
I was
aircraft,
also surprised to hear that the price of storing an aircraft is not that expensive. I believe it was less than $1,000 a month for I think one of the California locations.
yeah.
I thought it
Well,
would be by weight of the aircraft, like landing fees, but
that's
that was not the case.
yeah. And well, but when you've got like 300 planes out there, it adds
Yeah,
up.
yeah.
It adds up exactly. Now, here in Houston, I haven't ventured out to the airports here at all. But I'm pretty sure they have some stored at Hobby, because I know that the United had their 737 Maxes. They were stored at Hobby at one point. I don't know if they're still there. And I'm sure they've
I know they have them at IAH though.
yeah, yeah. I've seen
A lot
pictures
of the
online.
763s.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I've seen pictures online of the airplanes being stored. It's kind of sad to see it. Um, I guess because we're airline geeks. But well, speaking of
a
storage,
unique view.
it is a unique view. BA talked about they had some issues with the 380 in that French airport, right?
I don't know if it was the it was a BA issue or if it was even a non-event, but they had the pavement cracking. Yes, the runway pavement. Of course, it was not the where the wheels go, but it was towards the lights of the runway and the
Uh,
taxiways.
yeah,
But they've got all these 380s parked side by side on an airport tarmac that was perhaps not designed for the weight of those aircraft, because this is a World War II
right. Exactly.
location. I believe it's called Chateauroux or something like that.
But how would they have?
CLX or CRX? I forget.
I think it's CRX. But how would they have gone and chosen that airport? I mean, I'm guessing they use it because of its capacity. But I would think that they would have
Capacity,
done.
they have a long runway,
Yeah.
and they use it to familiarize BA crew with a new aircraft type. Apparently, they've been using it for a while.
Oh, okay. So maybe they.
And then just earlier this week, I saw that Swiss was also storing their 777s there.
In the same
I
location.
believe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the things
So
I've
they must
always.
have cheap rent,
Yeah. Yeah.
and it's an enormous airport for a tiny little town. So I guess it meets all the criteria.
So you know where we have to go and we can fly again, right?
Yeah, but it would be nice to see now, though,
It really
with
would
all
be
the
nice to
planes
see
there.
it. See, and that's the thing, right? Is that there's so much cool stuff going on, but we can't go anywhere to see it. So you have to rely on these articles that show up. Because one of the things I've always wanted to do is to head to Europe and go to some of these fields that are in Europe, some of these airfields where they store these airplanes. But I've just never had a chance or the time to do it. So maybe that's something I can do once flying is good again.
But I'm sure a lot of them would be deserted, though, under normal circumstances.
Yeah, but there are some places though that they actually store the plane, just like how we have.
There's one location in England, where BA stores, I think, some of their planes as well, besides Cardiff. But
exactly. Now Cardiff is interesting. I actually flew into Cardiff. One of my earlier flights across the Atlantic was in Virgin, and Heathrow had bad weather, and we circled too long, and we actually had to land in Cardiff, refuel, and then flew to Heathrow, which is kind of exciting.
No, but I'm sorry, this is accelerating the retirements of the 744s. Because if news reports are to be believed, KLM had their last, I believe it was Mexico City, Amsterdam, and Qantas from Santiago to Sydney. I hope that's not the case, but just like Air France is considering retiring their 380s, this may be the end of most 744 service.
It'll be crazy, isn't it? I did actually fly the KLM 747 Combi when it used to come here to Houston just before they stopped, because now they use I think they use a 787-9 is what they use now. Which I've been trying to get on it, but the fares are quite expensive. But speaking of airfares, by the way, so somebody wrote something online and they were talking about airfares and how. Do you think the airfares are going to go crazy once flying starts? Or do you think they'll have like a lot of deals and stuff to stimulate demand? What's your take on that?
I don't know. I think the combination, honestly, I don't know, but there could be also a lot of pent up demand.
Yeah.
But I guess they'll just have to wait to see once they reopen slowly. Because I think until May and June are over, most airlines are operating on maybe 10%, if that, of their regular capacity. But I mean, a lot could change.
That's true. I mean, it's crazy. I looked at Los Angeles to London. There's only one flight. It's a BA flight, and I assume all the mostly cargo is on it. New York City to.
Because I get some mailings from cruise companies, and for September and October. And their rates are not distressed sales. They're fairly high.
Right.
So just based on the cruise companies, I would say that I don't believe airfares are going to drop substantially.
I don't think so.
But it also price of fuel.
Yeah.
So
I guess we have to wait and see. The other thing too that I think we wanted to talk about. So let's talk a little bit about travel in the new normal for travel, right? So I know Emirates is requiring blood tests now for the flights that they have,
and I believe they're getting boxed meals, which is unheard of for them.
I know, right? For Emirates, at least. I saw somebody else, it might have been Delta, that said they had box meals. Um, there was somebody else, I might be incorrect there, but there was somebody else that said they had box meals. So, and I know,
And the cabin crew are wearing full masks and those PPEs, gowns,
yeah, I
to
actually think,
minimize their exposure.
which makes sense, right? I actually think that Emirates is doing a really good job based on what I've seen from their videos and how they're communicating it. I haven't actually spoken to anyone who's flown them during this time because they're doing a lot of repatriation flights.
Yes, and no transfer passengers. It's all point-to-point passengers, which
Yeah.
is weird. But
Yes, that is weird. Well, I saw, so I was talking to a friend of mine today, and she said, so she's in Vietnam and she's trying to get back to the US. Um, and she saw there were some flights that she could take, but they're connecting through places where you can't connect. So there is a disconnect between the the online systems that are pricing the fares and what's actually happening on the ground. I think one of the
yes,
places
yeah.
they have was Tokyo. If you're trying to connect it through Tokyo, you can't connect through Tokyo.
Okay,
Um,
I know Hong Kong and Singapore are big connect points, and
yeah,
they are shut to
exactly.
connecting traffic.
So one of the things that I want people to be aware of is that you need to be careful when you're buying these fares, and you really got to check the restrictions and make sure that you can get to your final destination. And I think it's kind of irresponsible for these online agencies to be doing that and not figuring out, um, what the local restrictions are.
Yeah, and I think people need to be aware of the buyer beware um, thing, that not to possibly buy any airfares right now until the situation clarifies. Now, whatever that means, because who knows
Right.
how long this will take? Because you
Exactly.
probably will not get a refund. You may get a credit, but again, that is carrier specific. Because I know I've heard of a lot of stories where people are very irritated
Hmm.
that they do not offer, airlines do not offer refunds.
All right. Well, I mean, I had
So
my sister had a trip at the end of March, and we had bought the tickets on Southwest, and they wouldn't offer the refund up front. I actually had to call and say, well, the flight's canceled, so can I get a refund? And when they did the refund, it actually went to a voucher, and then the guy had to physically request the refund, and I got the refund, which was fine. But it was an extra step that I had to do to ask for it.
yeah, but Southwest is also not a typical. They're much more flexible with their refunds and changes and all that sort of
Yeah,
thing
I've
compared to
had
other US airlines.
that's true, and even Europe. I mean, I've had during when this was going on, Ryanair and EasyJet was really giving people a hard time about getting refunds. Eventually, they did, but they had to jump through hoops just to get their refunds, which is ridiculous.
Hmm. And I don't know how long this empty seat trend will continue. I
So
don't think airlines can afford to leave those empty, at least not in the long term.
I agree with you. I agree with you. I saw that and I go, well, one of the things that someone was saying didn't make sense was, so the middle seat is empty, but then the row in front of you is also not is taken. But that's not 6 feet apart. That person is right on top of you, and you know from flying, as soon as somebody sneezes behind you, which they do all the time, or there's somebody coughs behind you, people are just going to go ballistic. You know, so
Yeah.
the question is, do you have every other row?
Yeah, I think the airlines would be fortunate if they could do every other road this at this time,
Yeah, I know,
at
and I
least
look.
until May or June, perhaps.
Yeah, well, there's
So
nobody on the planes anyway, right? So, um, but yeah, I mean, at some point we're gonna have to get back on the plane, so it's gonna be interesting to see. I mean, I don't even know what I'm going to do when once I get back in a plane. I know in Canada, effective April 20th, the Transport Canada, you have to wear a mask throughout the entire transaction, from the time you enter the airport to the time you leave. And
I think that's fairly common all over the world, at least in Asia.
yeah,
I believe that, in fact, you won't be allowed to board
which makes
if you do not have a mask. Yeah.
yeah.
So,
So travel is
but
definitely, and I've been thinking about, like the entire process. I'm going to write something about the entire process. And one thing I'm looking at is um, a lot of countries have travel restrictions, and I kind of want to do a timeline to give people an idea of what the current travel restrictions are out there. And that'll probably give them an idea of how, when they're flying, what to look for. Because people aren't thinking about restrictions. They see a cheap fare, they buy it, and then you realize, oh, I can't go to this country because you know what? You can't even get a visa to go to a lot of these countries.
what I'm also curious about is whether premium heavy carriers like Cathay or Emirates or any of the Middle East carriers will be able to fill their front cabins, because people have realized that you can survive mostly with Zoom meetings and whatever online conferences. And will there be a need or a demand for all those 380s and 748s? Be interesting to
Yeah.
see what happens.
Yeah, that's
So,
that would be very interesting indeed. And the other thing too is, so I've been on a lot of planes, as you know, and some of them are dirty. And it's sad to say, but this is becoming a trend. And I guess the good thing that's coming out of this is that they're actually cleaning the planes. I've always had to bring like a little napkin or something and clean the window because the last person's put their head on it and the grease from the hair or something is still on the window. So it's actually a good thing that they've been required to clean the planes better.
like never before, actually. I think after every flight, they're cleaning them
Yeah, no.
thoroughly.
Now, when I first started, I used to
So,
clean airplanes, and we would clean them thoroughly at night whenever they overnight, and we would literally clean everything. You do the carpets, the toilets would be cleaned, but in between flights, all we would do is we would just do if they're like the thing was like parents with Fruit Loops. I just hated Fruit Loops because they would throw them on the floor and then you had to vacuum them up and all that kind of stuff during the clean.
and chewing gum,
And chewing gum,
another
yes.
aggravation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was always a lot of work to clean those planes in between flights. But the toilets you'd always have to clean between every flight. You dump it and then you make sure you clean all the surfaces inside. But like chair tables and stuff, they were never wiped down. You'd look at them and if they look fine, then you'd be fine and you move on. And I think that's what's been happening. So I'm so glad that they have to clean the planes now. And the airline's going to have to figure out, okay, so your turn is not going to be a 15-minute turn anymore. It's probably going to be
Yep.
half an hour. Now they're going to have
I
to
don't
figure,
think, go ahead.
no, you go, for sure.
I don't think 99% of travelers realize how much work goes into one flight, just one flight.
No, they don't.
The amazing amount of things that have to come together at the right time
Yeah.
for one flight to operate. I don't think people have a clue. And they probably don't need to, but before people start blankly criticizing the airlines for everything, I mean, they should realize what goes into the operation of a flight.
Yeah.
But that's
And
just my own opinion.
no, you're very correct. And I've been trying to tell people that because I see people complain a lot online. And I was like, you're always taking it for the airlines. I'm like, well, one, I used to work for the airlines and I understand, and I work for different airlines, and I've flown 180 airlines. So I understand how it all works. But people don't appreciate it. I mean, think about it. You've flown across the Atlantic Ocean. You're a minute late and people are complaining. I'm like, really? Did you understand what just happened? But we've
No,
taken.
I think airlines are responding quite creatively. Like Air Canada, for instance, I think, 3 or 4 of their 777s.
Hmm.
They've taken out all the seats and they're using them for full freighter.
Oh wow, okay, that's
Uh,
good.
But I think yesterday or today I saw a picture of a BA
Uh-huh.
777 from
Okay.
China to London.
Uh-huh.
Seats were all there, but each seat was had one of these boxes of PPEs,
That's interesting.
and each of them was tied down. A very interesting picture. I guess so.
Yeah.
None of them moved.
Well,
So
I'm gonna see if I can find that picture, maybe pipe it in here. I have seen one of those, and one of the things that the article was talking about is that some airlines were not well, they didn't know how to do it, so they're trying to teach them how to bring cargo in the passenger area. Because you do have to tie it down, you do have to make sure the weight and balance is there. So a lot of that stuff goes in.
and the size, because you can only get it through the passenger door,
That's
unlike
right.
on a 747 freighter or
Yeah.
any other freighter aircraft. So,
Hmm.
but yeah,
It is kind of sad that KLM is retiring the 747 companies now, right? Because we need them right now. uh,
yeah.
oh my
But
God. Um,
but one more thing I'm upset about is the 777X, the 9, which I think is an absolutely amazing aircraft. But it just seems to be cursed with having the worst luck of entering service or at the wrong time. Because I
yeah.
was reading that Cathay is thinking of relinquishing their orders in favor of the 787-10.
Oh,
And then
wow.
I was hearing Lufthansa uh, was also considering delaying their
Yeah.
deliveries. So I don't know if carriers like Emirates, which I think they have a third of all the orders for the
Yeah.
777X, will take them.
Well, they probably will. They probably will because if they're retiring those the A380s, then they will need something for the long haul.
Yeah. But
Uh,
with the price of fuel being so low, is it really that much more expensive to operate a 380 than a 777? I guess for engine maintenance, yes,
well,
and
yeah,
other issues,
yeah,
crew,
yeah.
yeah.
But speaking of price of fuel, I think by the time we start flying again, don't you think the price of fuel will go back up?
Probably, but it might take a while for demand to
Yeah, to get
justify
back in there.
being much, much higher.
Yeah. I,
So,
I just talk about demand. The thing that really gets me these days, you don't see airplanes flying over anymore.
or the
uh,
frequency is much, much less.
I know it's crazy. I mean,
So,
I used to see the Air France A380 heading to Mexico City. Like every day would pass right over here. Nope, not anymore. It's kind of a sad thing. Oh, so we were talking about other airlines and airlines closing, but Germanwings is gonna go, right?
well, that's what Lufthansa says. Yeah, because I still don't get why they have Germanwings, why they have
Euro,
Eurowings.
yeah.
And there's a third one, the the regional uh,
Is it?
carrier that flies the CRJs,
Yes, I know which one you're talking
the
about.
blue tail, the blue and yellow tails.
Yes. Well, I can't remember the name of it now. I'm sorry, I can't remember the name of
It'll
it
come
either.
to me.
Yeah, but I know which one you're talking about. Yeah, and I have actually flown Germanwings and flown Euro. Is it Eurowings? But I didn't know why. I don't know why they had both of them because when Air Berlin went out of business, basically Eurowings took over their routes. And did you
Yeah,
know that? Did you know Air Berlin flew to Fort Myers?
I think I did know that. Yes, they did fly to Florida. Yes, besides
Really?
Miami.
Yeah, really? I guess it's a large German population in Fort Myers. I never understood why they did that.
Or leisure for the
Yeah.
beaches.
Well, I guess the
So
islands down there. That's true. But yeah, but that's a big one. So I thought that they were just gonna get rid of Eurowings at that point. I didn't see the need for it. But I guess now they realize it's not necessary, right?
yeah, because I was also reading that Eurowings now might get rid of the 340s.
Oh,
So because I thought those were cheap planes to fly since they were fully amortized and paid for and everything. But I guess not.
But then
So
if they get rid of those, they can't do Fort Myers anymore, or Miami, or
they could
any.
do it with the 330s.
Well, yeah, I guess they still have those in there.
Yeah, I don't think there's a big difference in capacity between a 332 or a 333 and a 343.
Okay. I think when I flew
So
them, I flew them. I think I did Dusseldorf, Miami. I think it was, and it was on the 330. Yeah, which is kind of cool because
yeah.
I got to board from the rear step. So it's interesting boarding a 330 from outside the rear step. um, all right, so let's talk about what we were talking about transiting, and I noticed that Narita had a 1 to 2 day quarantine when you arrived in.
Yes, I find it hard to believe that they could accommodate all those passengers in the baggage claim area,
Yeah,
as they supposedly stated. You have
yeah,
to pay for your upkeep for the 1 or 2 days, but they gave you, I believe, like a sleeping area with a bag, sleeping bag. And I
yeah.
think they gave you snacks and drinks until you got the results of your, I forget if it was a blood test or one of those swab tests.
Okay.
How could you possibly accommodate all those incoming passengers in the baggage claim of Narita? Even though flights are not that full,
Yeah.
but still.
Well, I guess
But
there's
I'm sure
only.
the Japanese have figured it out.
Yeah, yeah, and it's you figure it's 1 to 2 days, so there's probably always somebody in there. And I mean, you and I have been in the baggage claim in Narita. I assume that they're not using all the terminals; they're probably just using 1 or 2 terminals now. Well, maybe just
Yeah,
one
I don't
terminal,
know.
maybe
Yeah,
one
I
terminal,
don't know.
since they
But
don't
that's
have.
a huge logistics challenge, though, for let's say for Japan Airlines to move into one, because they've got all their counters there, their
Yeah, they do.
whatever. So I don't know what they've
Uh,
done.
yeah, that's
So
interesting. See, that's the thing, right? You need a man on the ground, or a person on the ground to go figure out what's going on in these airports. Maybe we can see
so
if we can maybe get somebody on from the airport and ask them what's going on. Um,
so
let's see what we have. So we talk about the freighter. Oh, let's talk about losses. United and Delta posted Q1.
I have the numbers here.
Okay.
I am actually quite amazed because the reporting was a little bit different
Uh-huh.
because United also wrote down some of their investments amounting to about $1 billion US.
Okay.
So if you compare the loss for the first quarter, this is, I think, non-GAAP for the first quarter of 2020. For United, it was about 1 billion, but for Delta, it was only 400 million-ish.
Oh,
There's a substantial difference. So Delta clearly seems to be firing on all cylinders,
God,
so to
yes.
speak, even at
Uh-huh.
this time. It'll be
Yeah.
interesting to see what American does, how American does. But
Huh. No, I saw that Delta
um,
said they had what, $6 billion. I didn't see the amount for United.
I think it was 2.1.
Hmm.
Delta was 600 million loss.
Yeah.
And the weird part was that the traffic for the first quarter was down for both carriers, about 17 to 18%.
Yeah.
So,
Hmm.
um, I mean, clearly their operational efficiencies are much, much greater at Delta.
Yeah. Yeah. They're definitely quite
But
different.
uh,
That's interesting indeed. Well, yeah. Well, we can look forward to American and see what they're going to come up with, right?
yep.
Oh my
So,
goodness. All right. I'm trying to look up my list to see what we had. I think we just about covered everything, right?
yeah, at least that we wanted to talk about for the first uh, meeting
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
discussion, if you will.
I think that should
So,
be. Yeah.
actually, another one that I just read about um, was Boeing
Okay.
planning to halve their production of 787s, which is their probably only cash cow right now.
Yeah. Wow.
I don't think they specified when they were going to start because it will be a while before they can really halve production.
Yeah.
Like that at a plant, but that's going to be a huge hit as well.
Because those are the ones that are made in South Carolina.
South Carolina, and even in Seattle, I believe.
Yeah.
The 8s are made at.
Yes, that's true. They're in Seattle.
I think the 9s and 10s are in South Carolina.
Yeah.
So, and I hope they're working on their software patch for the Max in this scenario behind the scenes, so that it's ready to go.
I hope so too. Well, the interesting thing about all this is that things that were critical, nobody cares anymore. I mean, the Max was in the news like almost every day in the aviation news anyway, and now every now and again you see something and nobody cares.
Actually, it's come at a good and a bad time for Boeing, I think.
Yeah.
Because the airlines are no longer clamoring; they don't want the capacity. But I think overall it has hurt Boeing. That's in a huge manner. But I just hope they have used this opportunity to fix the issues, even though it's so easy for me to say.
Yeah, right. Wait, I mean, these companies are really large, and I mean, having both of us worked in corporate, we know that these decisions that they make goes to so many different levels just to do it, and it's all the matter of, you know, I don't want to get blamed for it, you don't want to get blamed for it, and so everybody dots their I's and cross all their T's before anything gets out the door, you know, barring some kind of leak or something like that. But
but it's no secret that the Max was rushed through production. Boeing really didn't want to do it. Airbus forced their hand.
Yeah.
So, but it was also, I was very curious to read that Airbus is trying to reduce their production. And I thought they would be accelerating or at least maintaining their current production rates. But the airlines just don't want the planes right now.
Well, you know, I mean, I mean, because there's, you know, no one's flying, and even when people start flying, it's going to take a little while before you get full planes. You know, you probably have full planes to, you know, select destinations where a lot's going on. But even I'm looking at the conference calendars, and I don't think that there's going to be much conferences for the 2020.
For
the rest of the year. So people are very optimistic, but I just don't see it. Because I see this rolling, because every country have whatever is, you know, the coronavirus stuff in different stages. So I see it being a little while before everything is all ironed out.
I think I read most airlines expect 2022 for recovery. Even though SARS, what was when? 2000? No, 2000, early 2000s.
Yeah.
I don't think it was as infectious as
it wasn't.
This coronavirus, but it took, I think, less than a year for traffic to really build back up. But with this is a much deadlier and what is the word I'm looking for?
Contagious?
Yes, disease, with a lot of scary side effects.
Which is true.
And scary effects, actually. Than SARS ever was. And they managed to contain Ebola, which was deadlier than this. But it was in a part of Africa that was not very well connected with the rest of the world. So I think that helped a great deal.
Yeah, absolutely. So, that makes sense.
But there was also that Middle East, MERS, I think they called it.
MERS.
But again, that was mostly located in the Middle East and I believe parts of Asia, I think.
Yeah.
So
it's interesting because our industry is so, you know, fickle. I mean, it's so easy for something to come in and just basically wipe out the industry for a while, and then we have to start all over. But those are the kind of things that Cushrow and I are going to be talking about as we go along. We don't want to keep the shows too long. So we're going to pause for now, but we would like you guys to tune in the next time. You know, give us some feedback. Tell us how the show went. Tell us what you liked. Tell us what you didn't like. Let us know what you'd like to hear again from the two of us, what we'd like to talk about. And if you actually want to be on the show and talk aviation with us, let us know. I don't even have any contact information, but for the meantime, you can send me a note at feedback@pastrider.com. And once you send that note there, again, that's feedback@pastrider.com. We will see if we can get you on and on the show. Any last words, Cushrow?
Last words.
I
don't know.
guess final words for today's show.
Well, I hope things get back to normal, as most everybody is wishing. But this has actually been a time when you realize that all those things you thought you couldn't live without, well, guess what? You've had to live without them, and you've probably survived just fine. I think we're extremely fortunate that we have places where we can self-isolate compared to a lot of other countries. So, I mean, this has been a very unique experience, and I hope we learn from this. I really, really hope we learn from this, but I doubt we as a civilization are that smart.
It's funny.
So,
well,
but we'll find out.
Exactly, sooner or later. All right, folks. Well, thank you so much. We appreciate it, and we'll see you next time. Thank you all so much for watching and listening. This is Kerwin with Travel Talk with Cushrow and Kerwin. Talk to you soon.